The dust had barely settled on that explosive mid-interview moment when Cher was escorted off the set of The View following her clash with Joy Behar. Yet what unfolded in the days that followed proved to be far more riveting than any morning show segment, because Cher's exit didn't just echo through social media, it reverberated through corridors of power, drawing reactions from unexpected quarters and unsettling a television ecosystem that thrived on conflict but seldom on conviction. While The View scrambled to regain control, airing a statement about differences in tone and timing, the internet went bananas. Hashtags like #Cher was right and #silent strength trended globally, sparking a TikTok movement of fans recreating her leap to the exit or standing up silently in tribute at live tapings of other shows. And suddenly the narrative wasn't about who was wrong, but about who had more dignity. Network executives, once eager to manufacture sensational moments, quietly questioned their own strategies. Internal memos, leaked to media insiders, talked about the cost of staging viral fights versus sustaining meaningful dialogue. And for the first time, producers of morning TV considered structural changes, editorial guidelines about tone, vetting language for baiting questions, and longer prep discussions with guests, especially female icons who'd earned global respect. Meanwhile, far beyond the studio, Cher found herself lifted from being just a headline to being a symbol for listeners and viewers craving realness. She received a cascade of support from feminist organizations, entertainment leaders, and everyday people who publicly posted messages such as, "Thanks for walking so I don't have to scream," and "She left the table because she wouldn't lower her voice for it," and many shared the clip alongside fundraisers, petitions, and calls for respectful representation in media spaces. Cher herself, never one to ignore the moment, did not retreat. She released a short Instagram live message from her home studio, dressed casually with a single mic and no filter, reminding fans, "I wasn't angry. I was protective of my integrity, my legacy, my history. And I want every woman who's ever been cornered to know, exit is a choice, too." That simple line resonated like a mantra in the noise of outrage and ratings, and reinforced something not usually tied to celebrity drama: emotional sovereignty. The ripple effect extended beyond entertainment into the workplace. HR consultants, keynote speakers, even change management experts began quoting Cher in seminars, talking about strategic exits and exit as empowerment, and posts cropped up on LinkedIn referencing the moment as a lesson in personal boundaries in corporate settings. The story even landed at the feet of academic scholars. Thinkers in media ethics and communications published papers arguing that Cher's refusal to be gaslit live reflected an emerging shift in audience tolerance. We no longer want to watch nobodies get disemboweled live, we want people with experience to be heard, or to walk. Across daytime television, hosts issued reminders to ask questions that invited, not interrogated, and some shows even added tiny on-screen prompts. "Respect, please," is a joking yet meaningful way to signal tone. All in recognition of a moment that wasn't just a one-off drama, but a cultural turning point. Joy Behar herself, in her post-show reflections, tweeted, "If you catch Cher walking away, remember, sometimes the strongest voices just calm feet, one step at a time." A rare moment of conciliation that was met with mixed praise and criticism. Some called it a gracious olive branch, others labeled it performative humility, and the fissures it revealed only amplified existing debates about authenticity in public discourse. Meanwhile, Cher's public appearances took on new resonance. She gave interviews where she spoke deliberately about mindfulness, self-care, and the power in saying, "That's enough." She was interviewed by GQ, New York Times, even independent podcasts where the line of questioning focused not on scandal but on spiritual sovereignty, media power dynamics, and what it means to age in the public eye on your own terms. And all of this happened just as her film, released weeks later, debuted on streaming platforms, its promotional materials now tinted by her exit moment. Billboards showed her walking away from a red couch silhouette with the tagline, "I came to speak, not perform," which drove remarkable engagement and outperformed marketing estimates by 200%, a sign that audiences were paying attention not just to her artistry, but to the boundary she drew in public life. Ultimately, the chapter closed not with a yell, but with a whisper, a note of cultural estrangement that became an anthem, a bit of digital folklore that shaped how we think about media moments, and a question left behind. What happens when we stop watching people be torn apart, and start watching them set themselves free? In the weeks that followed, Cher's departure from The View became more than just a spark. It was a signal fire, quietly transforming how audiences and networks alike treated the concept of celebrity vulnerability. And while tabloids moved on to fresher controversies, those who truly understood the weight of what had happened kept digging deeper, reframing her walkout not as a tantrum but a textbook example of preserving dignity under pressure. Invitations poured in for Cher to appear on other shows. Talks with Oprah, late-night hosts, even TEDx organizers who wanted her to speak on the art of walking away, but she turned most of them down with quiet grace, choosing instead to let her actions echo louder than any follow-up appearance could, a decision that further elevated her in the eyes of fans who were tired of endless cycles of outrage and redemption. In a media climate addicted to spectacle, Cher's restraint became radical, and that paradox, one of the most outspoken women in entertainment choosing silence, only fueled deeper admiration, and it wasn't long before artists, writers, and musicians began referencing her in their own work. Lyrics in indie tracks, fashion lines inspired by her defiant elegance, even theater monologues that reenacted that unforgettable moment when she calmly unhooked her mic and left a national platform without flinching. Universities invited her to receive honorary degrees, not for her music, but for what professors called live media resistance, and feminist collectives used her image on posters next to slogans like, "You can love loud, and leave louder," transforming her exit into a quiet revolution in public narrative. Meanwhile, at ABC, The View's internal dynamics began to evolve too. New producers were hired with a focus on empathy-driven programming. A younger talent coordinator was brought in who explicitly cited Cher's departure as the wake-up call the show needed. And while ratings took a temporary dip from curiosity burnout, long-term audience trust slowly began to rebuild, this time among viewers who wanted content with less sting and more soul. As for Joy Behar, she remained controversial as ever, but something in her had visibly shifted. She spoke more carefully during interviews, often throwing in a self-aware joke like, "Don't make me get churred," a line that drew laughs but also acknowledged the shadow her former guest had left behind. And Cher, never one to hold grudges publicly, continued doing what she did best, shaping culture by simply showing up as herself, albeit more selectively now. And when she did return to the stage during a televised tribute event for women in the arts, she said only one thing that hinted at the viral clash. "You don't always have to fight the room. Sometimes, you just find a better room," and the crowd erupted, not just in applause, but in understanding. Her brand expanded, too. Her line of wellness products, which had previously been marketed with vague messaging around ageless power, was rebranded with quotes inspired by her walkout, focusing on boundary setting, self-trust, and unapologetic exits, and they sold out within hours of launch, outselling younger influencer brands that had dominated the space for years. Her fanbase grew wider still, now including professionals, older millennials, even Gen Z voices who saw her as a blueprint for navigating a world constantly demanding more emotional performance for less respect. And influencers stitched her viral clip into everything from motivation videos to business coaching content. By the time end-of-year retrospectives rolled around, Cher's name was listed not just among pop culture moments, but cultural pivots. "The year women stopped explaining," one headline read, and her face was right beneath it. Even in politics, the metaphor was echoed. One progressive candidate used her exit as part of a stump speech about walking out of rooms that refused to hear you, and commentators noted how the symbolism had stretched far beyond its origin. And in all of this, Cher remained grounded. When asked in a rare interview what she thought about being turned into a movement, she laughed softly and said, "I didn't plan a movement, darling. I just knew when the moment stopped deserving me." And that line, equal parts wisdom and bite, became the quote that defined not just her year, but a cultural shift in how power, poise, and presence are defined under the spotlight.